Hello, everyone, and welcome to Andrew's first ever Max Fear clear. All 67 fear on the black coat, the aspect of Malinaway. We are getting into it with an onion pop and unseen ire, as well as a chaos gate in the corner. Andrew is a prolific high fear player. He has been clearing a lot of 62s and 65s and slowly progressing, although honestly kind of rapidly progressing towards this. Very impressive. And you will see throughout this run that is just bananas as we start off with an epic chaos revival. Basically no downside. I mean, any hit's going to kill us at this point anyway, so no downside. And in exchange, we get plus 20 on every single room completion. For those of you who do not know, Chaos Revival works through scars. It's one of those few things like the aspect of Nergal, as well as Ghost Onion Keepsake that works through scars. So very nice to see that. An excellent layer of safety. Speaking of safety, we eat a Gale block there. But early game Coat is rough. Anyone who has played Coat can tell you, especially at high fear, it really sucks to not be able to use the dash attack because of the giant animation commitment. It sucks to have to rely on attacks because there is some jank there that I'll get into a little bit later. But the specials are there for you. They're trusty. Not Trusty Shield, well, Hades Brain Rot too, but they are very trusty. And they do a ton of damage, so seeing a hammer this early is great because a lot like the skulls, the staff, and really most aspects, most weapons in general, there are some hammers that you just absolutely want to see. Must click every time, and that is Shimmering. Another Gale block eaten there. We don't need those. We're fine. We've got Chaos Revival coming online in 4 encounters. But if we click Shimmering, we win, essentially, and you're seeing this, so yeah, we click Shimmering. Jokes aside, there is only one thing that is better than Shimmering, and that is Shimmering with Hera. Because of the way that the rockets bounce, as you can see, they bounce twice. You now get Shimmering plus Hitch, and then everything is hitched, and suddenly you are just room clearing like you've never cleared before. Never touching the attack button for the rest of the run, other than for, like, utility, pretty much. And the reason why attack is brutal on Coat is for a number of reasons, but I'll let this boon screen pop up before I really get into it. What do we see? And we see special. Hera special, Sworn Flourish, Shimmering Rockets. Main damage is solved as we get into the Rootstalker here. We see Apollo. Attack would be I mean, it's not doing anything for us until we get the, I think it's Dazzling display where it does days for you, but that's way too much to set up. So just want to click Sprint here. A little bit of lingering to think about whether or not attack was worth, but again, you're not really using it other than for utility with something like Blitz or Scorch or Freeze. Even Poseidon wouldn't be great. I mean, blasts in an ideal world, like a 2-second blast attack alongside Shimmering. By the way, this is an absolutely ridiculous run seed, going from chaos to quick rooms. For any fear, this would be beyond cracked. Seeing Arachne right here, giving us the best possible boon for this setup anyway. We just want armor, we want defense. We are into a nice max life room, which will help for additional safety. So as we clear this room, again, just really relying on Shimmering, not touching the attack until we have it for utility purposes. Of course, you can use it to just finish off enemies, but really want to stay away from it once you're past that early game, simply because it's clunky. You're not using the dash strike because of the animation commitment, and unfortunately we lose our last Gale there, but it's fine. We got armor, we got Chaos Revival, and we have got Shimmering. Again, that attack commitment is very dangerous. Even more dangerous on controller, which is why a lot of people, oh my god, speaking of attack utility, it's like Andrew's going so fast I can't even commentate certain things. What do we want to see here? Blitz, of course, or Storm Ring. And we get Blitz on attack. So that utility, a little bit of a flex where you can tag Hecate, for example, with Blitz, activate it with Shimmering, vice versa. Just get in there with a punch and then run away. Speaking of running away, we're using the arena really nicely to avoid these dark side projectiles. And we are just going to burst her down as I can finally, maybe, talk about why attacks are not so great to build into on Coat, particularly on controller. If you've ever messed around with it, you'll notice that the attack regardless of whether or not you hit anything in terms of like the stick, like if you tilt the stick, if you leave it in neutral, you're always going to get moved forward. And because of how controller gameplay works, you're always moving because, or rather, you're always either aiming or moving because of how left stick is mapped to both. So being able to not control that, or not being able to control that, if I can speak, is a huge downside and just adds to the risk as we are dodging through this sheep wall excellently. Thank you to Blinding Rush and the aspect of Malinaway coat bonus. With keyboard and mouse, back to the attack thing, you are able to counteract that a little bit. You can, like, if you're punching backwards, or sorry, if you're punching forward, you can hold backwards, so you can kind of cancel out some of that drift, but it's still not ideal, and the base damage is pretty low on the punches. So it's much, much better, especially, and I think really mainly for high fear to build into the special. There are, of course, situations such as, 2-second heft blasts or like an Exodia build of weapon agnostic boons. But all in all, as you can see from this gameplay, it's shimmering, it's Hera special. We are rocking out of Oceanus with some of the craziest and cleanest gameplay I have seen. Got to get that gold there, by the way, a little bit extra. We have almost 50 seconds on the timer as we debate the Chimera Jerky. At this point, though, Andrew's kind of close to a boon. Like, you think if I don't spend money on anything, I'll probably be able to afford a boon by mid-shop. Because I've got Krolex, I'll be able to afford pretty much most of the shops and most of the things I want in the shop. I think in hindsight, maybe he's like, I could have taken that. It would have been fine, but damage was so strong already between shimmering, between blitz. We've got all the safety we need, the move speed, plus being able to tag everything with shimmering Hera special. No need, but Breath of Eros is very nice. It's essentially like Snow Queen, one-use Snow Queen. It does get eaten up by a lot, although I do think, like traps, for example, like traps can easily eat up your Breath of Arrows, and I do think they work on a lot of the barriers, which is kind of annoying, but I guess that makes sense because they are damage sources and you don't want to be standing in them regardless. And speaking of, we took the Breath of Arrows hit there. We took 1 damage from the trap as well. Speaking of decisions, though, that you have to make throughout any high fear run, Narc versus family dispute here. For a lot of people, it might be as simple as, okay, I'm going to take Narc. He pauses the timer. He gives me something. But honestly, like, what do we need from Narc at this point? And seeing these two in a room is fantastic. Taking Dying Wish here, having to fight Zeus, not a huge deal with 5+ minutes on the timer, with damage being so strong. And getting Dying Wish actually really helps with room clear because you are essentially like double dipping into the benefits of Hitch and Shimmering. You've basically got the whole room tagged at all times. And then when one enemy dies, everyone's taking a little bit of extra damage because they're hitched from Shimmering. And just like that, we burst everyone down in like 25 seconds and we hit an epic Storm Ring. Many people know, as we see mid-shop right here for another nice skip, that there are just win conditions or weapon agnostic boons that will give you power regardless of aspect. Unlike Poseidon here, which we're weighing whether or not to take, I think it's really as simple as we click life and then weigh whether or not Poseidon will give us anything. Andrew says, no thanks. I think Hydraulic Might probably would have been the only hit there, the only reason. But when you've got Apollo, Hera, and Zeus, no real reason to add Poseidon to your god pool. There's not really anything that would help other than, again, like I said, Hydraulic Might. Pretty annoying to hit Gale there, or I guess use Gale there, but this boss is just so annoying with the bullet hell, and you can get lucky sometimes and he won't like move around instantly, but with Grit 3, with wards, it's just bound to happen, especially if you're trying to play safe and not get hit by any of his like shadow minion projectiles. As I was saying earlier, like Storm Ring is just one of those boons that work just regardless of aspect. As we finish up our Krolex charges, we've got more than enough to buy out boons. Hello, Nem. Again, very quick Oceanus. Super nice to see. Like, I think it was like a minute and 50-second Oceanus, which is crazy for high fear. Unfortunately, don't get anything super great with Hermes. Getting Nimble Limbs is nice because it does stack, I think, additively with the coat bonus. Either way, though, not the best Hermes hit. Nitro Boost would have been great there. Travel Deal would have been okay. But yeah, you really want to see Nitro Boost on Max Sphere from Hermes. Clicking Wolf Howl, I think Selene, especially when you don't see her first, is very useful, has a lot of great utility boons. Wolf Howl is probably the best one just because of the iframes it gives you during the startup. As we get into Sirens with plenty of time and with one of the best builds I have ever seen walking into Sirens, this thing has everything. And for anyone who has played High Fear, especially Max Fear, Sirens are the great gatekeeper. And as Andrew progged through his Max Fear journey, when you start getting to Sirens and when you start clearing Sirens, you feel like it becomes so much more achievable clearing 67, just because Fields is, in my opinion, a big step down in terms of the difficulty of this boss fight. Cerberus is much more of an execution-based fight, build check, timer check. You're not really up against like all the BS that Sirens can throw at you, the projectile bullet hell, having to deal with essentially like timer, 4 different enemies, the potential of I was going to say jetty feature as we get a jetty feature, or Charybdis feature. So getting through Sirens is huge because Erebus will always be a little bit of timer hell unless you hit like the God Seed that Andrew did here, especially as we rock into Sirens with Gale charges still. Not like Erebus, where we had nothing for Hecate. Just a little bit of trolling aside, this has been an absolutely cracked run, being able to kite around and just prop down Stormring, use Shimmering Hera special, and just really play safe while not rushing against timer. Sirens is already a hard enough fight as it is. There are a lot of patterns that can overlap, and you'll have to deal with them in ways that you aren't maybe completely practiced in. So for all those reasons, they are the great keeper of 67. But I know from talking to people in the speed chord, not for myself, because I'm not built like that, but Sirens is very much the great gatekeeper. And once you get to Sirens and get through Sirens, a lot of people say I made it to Chronos first time I got through them. And those are really the big progression barriers that I've seen, where you get through Erebus, you're struggling with timer. Hecate is like a 3-minute fight sometimes because you have no damage, etc., etc. And then you're into Sirens, and that's like a huge wall. But once you're past that, Fields very much is a step down because the encounters are much shorter. Like I think for the most part, you're dealing with 5 encounters plus the mini boss, way more streamlined than the previous regions. The enemy types, you typically have more room to deal with them, which is nice. So you're not really under the pressure of like a condensed room where you are going to take damage from left and right as we walk into Fields with Sash here. This is, where am I going? That breath of arrows on the thorns, that is extremely unfortunate. Well, at least, actually, I have nothing to say to that. That is very unfortunate. Taking and clicking urgency here is nice as we see that growth node. We're not using magic much, so being able to take growth is super, super handy. As I mentioned before, Wolf Howl is a great piece of utility, so having that in our pocket along with everything else in this build is massive. And unfortunately, God, those guys are so annoying. I think depending on your timer and depending on what else is around, like if you've activated an encounter or not, it's honestly not a bad idea sometimes to take care of them first, especially when you have evade, because their like vacuum can really do a number on your charges. But enough yapping about potential boons, and we are just clearing out this encounter here. What would we want from a hammer? Honestly, nothing would like materially improve the run chances to win. It's already so high, but some nice quality of life or like a little bit extra would help. And Siege Frame definitely fits that bill. I think being able to get a bigger hitbox on your... Also, wait, are we setting up for a 2-2 Fields here? Hold on. But being able to set your blitz up better with a bigger attack hitbox and being able to tag enemies from farther is nice in terms of safety. So again, we are kiting, we are throwing out specials, we are making sure to toss down Stormring on those high priority enemies like these Lamias and of course these boulders. You don't have to hit them right now, although we may as well just kill this one just for old time's sake. Again, looking at what hex nodes, what Path of Star nodes can help outside of the hex itself. Like after you use is always really nice. Urgency is great. Move faster is always nice. It doing damage to armor is whatever. Really clicking it mostly for that extra move speed. This encounter, pretty standard here. We got some bunchers, we got the usual suspects, everything grouped together and being kited around with shimmering is fairly standard. Numbskulls are not the worst enemy to see. Like when you're in fields and you're dealing with menace, you absolutely hate to see a swarm of Tempi, especially if they're armored and they have fangs. But we've got Narcissus and Echo here. Best friends till the end. And we have evade, evade, evade. Speaking of best friends till the end. One of the best clicks in the entire game as we see the final confirmation that we are getting a 2-2 fields indeed. Very nice. Unfortunate that Hef has to get popped here because he definitely has some stuff that would have been nice to see, such as heavy metal, security systems, always decent. Nothing else I think would have been particularly great. But as we eat a Gale block here, doesn't matter. Just have to go ahead and clear the rest of this enemy pool just because Vamp is extremely annoying with the rest of the enemies around and has a ton of health. And anyone who has unfortunately dealt with this guy has had an almost kill turned into basically a redo of the fight because he vacuums you up and you have to fight him again. And that's even after SGG has like nerfed this guy like 2 times, as we see another Zeus boon and Assemble Exodia. Sorry, I don't know why I said that with like a Z. But we've got Static Shock, amazing ward clear. Tartarus is just going to go fantastically. Now it's all about execution on Cerberus. Again, like I mentioned earlier, very much is, little unseen ire proc there from standing in the lava. Andrew will say it's not intentional, but that was a pretty Giga Brain move. Got to eat the damage, rush in while impervious, and get that 70% damage boost. Man, Unseen Ire is a fantastic boon. Curious for those of you in the comments, do you keep Unseen Ire on any fear, especially when you could take Athena in fields? I think I do. I think Unseen Ire is just that good. You're taking enough hits in any fear. Also, why am I talking about any fear? We're in the middle of just cleaning up Serb. Thank you, Gale. Very, very nice overall. This has been a clean fight. Some nice tech. Just need to make sure. Oh my gosh. Look at how much Serb has been demolished by all of the boons we've got going on. Very nice Wolf Howl here. As you can see, we are moving and grooving thanks to the Path of Star nodes we clicked. Not the worst pattern we've ever seen from Serb, though he is definitely being more evasive than usual. About to get some Flame Breath. We can't get behind him here. A little bit awkward, but we can get to the side. Some nice dodging. Serb is, again, one of those fights, like I said, that is truly a timer check, which means it's a build check, and you just have to hope he doesn't throw out some BS to you. He does hit really hard, which I think is kind of like the offset to his... Oh, very unfortunate. Like, super awkward timing. Drifted to the right, I think, a little bit to get hit by that. All in all, though, 80 armor is much better than 80 life. Not that really any of it matters in particular when we've got this crazy build. We've got a very clear antler opportunity, although I think it would have felt a lot better in terms of antler if we had 100 armor instead of 24, 25, whatever it was before then. Yeah, Serb is not necessarily being the greatest guy right now. He's super evasive. He's rocking with this overlapping pattern that is very tricky to deal with. So we are simply running around, kiting, hitting the shimmering. And this, again, back to what I was saying earlier, is exactly why you want to build for the special, why you want to build for this hammer in particular, because there are just so many encounters where enemies will run away from you and you have no way to deal with them. And trying to rely on the attack or like the dash strike, God forbid, for something like this is extremely annoying. And it's not enough on this Serb fight to just have Stormring because he moves around so much. And the same can be said for Kronos as well. So really need to see all of these pieces come together. And we get out of here with the damage certainly limited. Very, very unfortunate that that Serb explosion does 80 damage. Just a silly mistake, a little bit awkward. I think he had like 1 foot on what would have hurt. And as we're checking EEE there, we are looking very nice, have plenty left in the tank to deal with both Tartarus, but especially Kronos. I think most players who have repeatedly cleared High Fear, especially Max Fear, would say that getting to Kronos with like 40% or more EEE is like the dream. And EE in general is just such a significant difference. There is a lot that can happen to you in the Serb fight, as you saw, as well as Tartarus and Kronos, that just gets completely mitigated by dodge chance. All right, we are in a small room, which is typically nice because you can get all the enemies together, but seeing satyrs throwing spears at you, seeing Tempe with all the BS that they've got going on can be a little bit tricky, but thankfully it is the first room, not a huge encounter. Clear that very nicely. At this point, I think Andrew's probably feeling amazing as these gold bags are wreaking havoc and zoning him from God knows what. But back to my point, I think Andrew's got to be feeling amazing here. Of course, it would have been nice to have that back on Serb, but we've got at least one free hit in terms of armor. We have got our Gale charges, and we've got all the damage we need to clear. And of course, Antler, as many of you know, is just the great enabler, the great defensive tool, to quote Foolish and anyone else who's ever said that in a commentary. Being able to kill things so much faster is infinitely more valuable than any sort of life or even pin. Not that you would take pin, but even compared to something like Tooth or like Knuckle Bones or anything really that you could take in terms of being like, oh, I want to play it safe. I've got 100 health. I've got X amount of armor. The chance to do triple damage, and that's 30% chance, by the way, without any success rate or like cherished heirloom. A little disappointed that Andrew didn't pick up the treats from back there, the gifts of the night, but it's okay. You know, would have been nice to take home a party favor from clearing Max Fear, but you know, maybe when I do my Max Fear sometime in the next 3 years, I'll take the party favor. All jokes aside, yeah, Antler is fantastic. You can see here it is completely deleting rooms. There are some encounters that look like they're any fear as we roll into Dad. And what we're looking for from Dad is pretty much like Deep Descent. I think Life Tax. Oh, there. There it is. Life Tax would have been okay. I think Howling Soul with Storm Ring would have also been really nice, although could have been tricky for the rest of these rooms because it can, you know, fly off. And Howling Soul is a bit of a controversial boon anyway as we eat a Gale barrier. Unfortunate. We still have some left in the tank, though. We should be fine for Kronos. And with Deep Descent, Andrew said this is when he felt like the run was really won. Because for those of you who have not really seen it in practice on Rivals Kronos, it is unbelievably helpful. You are looking at only 3 of those Satyr servants at the start, so that means 3 fewer explosions. The mini boss from one of Kronos' phases gets completely removed, and perhaps most importantly, as I said most really weirdly, but perhaps most importantly, it completely removes Klonos, or the clone of Kronos, from phase 3. I think he appears like in shadows or as like a suggestion, but he's not actually like grieving you throughout phase 3. So Deep Descent is inarguably, in my opinion, the best boon to get when you've already got Unseen Ire, right? Like Gygaro's dash would have been okay, but we don't need more damage. 40% isn't really going to move the needle here. We've got Antler. Again, you can see that right here. Like, we were able to take care of these enemies. They exploded, and we don't have to deal with the enemies up in front. So it's just us and Kronos as we dodge nicely through the scythe there, hoping to pretty much take care of phase 1 with no complications. Rivals Kronos is an extremely tricky fight. It is probably the hardest boss in the entire game, although I think some people feel differently when it comes to, like, Sirens or Heroes. But phase 1 Kronos is definitely not one of the hardest bosses in the game. He can be pretty straightforward, especially if you have this amount of time. He is being a little bit annoying with how he's like zoning Andrew away from like good dodging spots, but these are pretty nice patterns, and with the coat move speed, it should be pretty streamlined in terms of dodging the rest of these attacks. As I was talking about in fields and kind of throughout the run, being able to just kite enemies and throw rockets out is a huge, huge skill, and Andrew has been executing flawlessly as we EE there, but he's been executing flawlessly in terms of the kiting and proccing shimmering and proccing anything you would want, like blitz, storming, etc. So really leaning into the main win condition, which is just spamming special, but also weaving in a lot of that weapon agnostic or aspect agnostic damage. Phase 1, again, like I said, pretty straightforward. As long as your timer's good, you can bring pretty much all of your resources into Phase 2, other than a couple EEEs. Very nice to see those scythe throws. When I was learning the game, very scary to deal with those dodges through the scythe and trying to learn when to dodge and when the spacing needed to be a little bit better. But once you get it down, it's a great pattern to see from Chronos because it's such a huge punish window as soon as you dodge through the scythe. Very, very nice pattern to follow up from the first little insta-nuke from Chrono. I guess the first string of insta-nukes. Going to be another scythe throw here. Great to see. Just a ton of damage we're being able to put down pretty much instantly into Phase 2 here. And Deep Descent is huge here as well, just for the lack of tempi that heal him. If you guys have played what feels like a good run, and then you get into P2 Chronos, and he's got 8 bajillion tempi healing him essentially back to like 2/3 health. That feels really bad. Man, he is loving these scythe throws today. But Andrew has been locking in, leaning forward, and we are just going to burst Chronos down here and straight into Phase 3. With 2 minutes and 10 seconds for Phase 3, I think we have got to feel amazing about this. I think 90 seconds is probably the bare minimum you'd want for a safety fight, so an extra 40 seconds is great. Doing a little bit of tricky dodging here. It always makes me nervous when someone has to dodge over one of like the cutscene lines. But as you can see here, we are expert and practiced. Thank you, Gale. Have 1 block left, although not sure how much we'll need that for the rest of this fight because it is, I believe, 45-second cooldown. And these hands, again, these hands can be really annoying. So only having to deal with 3 of these, and like I said, no Chronos at all. All set there. That is a beautiful scythe dash. Love that pattern right there. Baiting the vacuum and then slam. Oh yeah, we have like the suggestion of Chronos. It's like he's not actually there. It's like, I think just the scripted attack where he like goes to the center, Chronos shows up for like 2 attacks, and then we're back to just 1v1 versus Grandpa. A lot of this fight is very much like his turn, your turn, especially when you are playing a weapon that needs to get in close. And again, this is, I'll say this for the millionth time, this is exactly why shimmering and coat special is like the best way to clear high fear. If we had to rely purely on like blitz attack and storm ring, it would be extremely difficult to. Again, really nice scythe dodge there. Got clipped at the end, unfortunate, but hey, we'll count it. We'll count as an almost, but we are counting this as a W because Andrew closes this out in expert fashion. Didn't even need that last Gale block. What a run on the backs of shimmering. Didn't even talk about how we got weak in the end shop to just kind of round out our god pool and get a little bit of extra damage reduction. Didn't even need it though. 0 damage taken against Chronos. What a damage board. My goodness. Chaos and traps. Who needs Arcana? Absolutely massive congratulations to Andrew on his first Max Fear clear. What a masterclass in coat gameplay. You can see that little star, that little medal right there. Well deserved. Huge congrats to him. Evade, evade, evade. Put in work. But it was also Andrew himself kiting like a master, doing what you do on coat, which is win with shimmering. And like all Hades 2 players, all Hades 2 high fear players, I have to include this with, it was just some shimmering slop. It wasn't a big deal. Jokes aside, thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. See ya.